Should I introduce myself?
Yeah. Sorry, Jeff, I don't have a bio here.
Okay, I didn't make a bio.
Needs no introduction.
Well, I'll give you one anyway. I'm Jeff Hexter. I'm usually here in my capacity as send out cards, but I also do computer consulting. I fix problems for people, mostly small businesses and individuals. But I like to teach people so they can solve their own problems. And one problem people have is they don't understand this whole thing about passwords. You all have passwords for the websites you access. I'm going to talk with you about how to create passwords that are easy to remember but are hard for hackers to suss out. I actually have all of this presentation created onto copies of the slides for you and more information about what I'm going to talk about here, but I'll pass those out at the end. John, are you ready for me?
Absolutely.
All right. So I don't have a little clicker here. Rather than just reading my slides, which is really tacky, I know. You all use them. Their passwords are used for authentication. That's something that we would do face-to-face in our normal lives. We'd walk up to somebody, they'd say their name, we'd recognize their face and their name and know that that's who they say that they are, who they say they are. Since you're not next to the person, when computers are talking to each other and you're at the other end, they have to have a digital way to do that, and that's what these passwords are for. They're really just for authentication. They're not for scrambling your data. When you use a password for scrambling the data so people can't figure it out, that's called encryption. There it's called a key. It's not a password, just so you know. Sounds pretty simple? There are a ton of things that have to do with this. You don't have to know all of them to make passwords that are hard to hack and easy to remember. I just threw a bunch of terms out there. I'm sure you're all familiar with hashing and password aging and salt in your password and all these password storage algorithms, right? There's what you specialize in? Okay. Then we'll just skip the rest of the presentation. You just have to learn three things. You got to learn to think like a hacker. That's not that complicated, but we'll get into that. You got to understand, you need to understand that longer passwords are more secure than shorter passwords. If your password is 5 characters long, it's already cracked. And if you use the same password at different sites, you're running a big risk. Once somebody has your account ID at one place, and they know your password at a certain place, they probably can figure out what other places you use. There are simple solutions for having hard to hack passwords that you can remember that are different at different places. Now, thinking like a hacker. Hackers don't just sit there and say, okay, his ID is this, I'll try that, and then try a different password, and then that didn't work, I'll try another one, because there's an infinite number of passwords they can try. What they like to do is they steal a list of user IDs and passwords, and then that list is usually scrambled in a certain way, referred to as hashing. And then they'll run the same hashing algorithm on a dictionary of words. There are hundreds of million, at least 100 million passwords that have been stolen and that are freely available on the internet. And people tend to use a lot of the same passwords. They'll go through a list of known passwords, common passwords, and convert them into the hashes that are stored on the site's service, and then just compare against that database that they've cracked, that they've stolen. If your password is on that list, they will figure it out. And this can be done very rapidly. I was surprised to learn that on a typical computer, a 5-character password can be cracked. Any 5-character password can be cracked within a day. Once you get out to around 10 characters, it can take 10 days on some very high-end equipment. So if your password is that short and it's of the form that's in one of these dictionaries, it's not secure. And that last point there is that these tools only get better, they don't get worse. As long as the same technologies are used for storing people's passwords, they're only going to be cracked faster and faster as time goes on. So what does it mean to have a long password with a large character set? The characters on your keyboard are the capital letters, the lowercase letters, the number keys, and all those funny symbols that we never know what they mean, like the asterisk and the caret above the shift. I can't even tell you what key it is. Doesn't matter. Shift 6, it's a little caret for exponents. those characters can be used in passwords on many sites. Certain places restrict you. The key here is when you have a large character set, when you're using an uppercase letters, lowercase letters, numbers, and these funny characters, you increase the complexity of the password. Once they've gone through their dictionary, the only way a hacker can figure out your password is by going through every combination of characters. So using a large character set gives you so many choices. It's a large space of data they have to search through. For example, if you just use lowercase letters, you have 26 possible options for every character. 26 times 26 times 26 times 26. I ran it through a calculator. And that's adding up just the 1-character password, the 2-character passwords, the 3-character passwords, and the 4-character passwords. That's a lot of combinations. We couldn't go through that in our own time, but if you start throwing in different character sets, capital, lowercase, symbols, and numbers, you got 95 different characters. 95 times 95 times 95 times 95. You end up with 170 times more, over 170 times more choices. And that's just in 4 characters. These numbers grow to huge, I can't name the numbers, they're so large. But I'll show you some. Now, if you use the same password, I went over this before, if you use that same password at multiple sites, you run that risk of, when they've compromised you at one site, you're compromised at all those sites. If they have your password to your email and it's the same you use at the bank, that's not a good thing. Now, what do these secure, memorable passwords look like? They're long. 12 characters if they can be, 13, 14, 15 if that's possible for you. You don't use it elsewhere. It's not a word in one of these hacker dictionaries, which means it's not a regular word, or not just a regular word in the dictionary. And it's not a series of keys on a keyboard, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that's very common. That last part, we're going to follow a private pattern that only you know and you don't tell anybody else. For example, I've got 4 examples here for you. You put a pattern you know, parentheses at the beginning and the reverse parentheses at the end, around some word that you've put capital letters in and symbols in and numbers in. We've got a 17-character password that maybe you can remember that Google sucks. I don't know what that number is, but I ran it through a password calculator. It will take a system a long time to generate all the possible passwords that are 17 characters long. A long time today. We're looking at somewhere in the order of, I think it was 5 billion years, using modern computing technology. It's a very secure password. Another password, just $signs at each end. Or it could be a pattern at each end that you just remember. I tell people that they can use their old password that was short and memorable in that middle word because you already know it. Just don't tell it to anybody, as long as you pad it with these patterns. These numbers I have no idea how you pronounce these numbers. They will take incredible amounts of time for computing. You don't have to take any notes, guys. I got all this for you.
So that's to take notes and
I understand.
I appreciate that, but you know what? When
I remember it better when I take notes.
Right.
Even as I was saying that, I should have passed these out. You could have taken notes on my handouts. So what I'd use to make a secure password is a 3 or 4 character pattern that I remember. A word, and I use that. I'll reuse that pattern. I won't tell you what it is, but it's my private pattern. I use a word, and I can change that word from site to site. It may be the name of the website, the service may remind me of what that word is. I don't have to write them down if I remember them that way. And then I will throw in, using a pattern I remember, numbers and letters, or numbers and symbols somewhere in that word. There's some common letters that look like certain numbers, and people will often substitute a letter for a number. You've seen kids write in this, they call it leet speak, where they throw in numbers into words. That's okay if that works for you, but just have some words you like. And if this is still too complicated to remember, Maybe you have a lot of